Women, hear me now. There is a precise second in a man's existence where the fog lifts, and he understands he has forfeited a treasure he will never replace. But that realization never strikes while you are weeping, pleading, rationalizing, or overextending yourself. It arrives in the stillness after you cease your efforts. It lands the moment you finally retreat, when you reclaim your energy. When you stop draining your own spirit for a man who has become settled in his complacency. A man does not long for the woman who was a permanent fixture. He longs for the woman who turned her back because she finally recognized her own value. Regret does not breed in the presence of excessive care. It breeds in the sudden vacuum where your attention used to live. When the morning notifications vanish. When the line goes dead. When he stares at a blank screen and grasps that the silence is there because you stopped acting as the glue for a bond he wouldn't help cement. And that silence? It strikes with a force that words never could. The psychology of regret. Men don't feel loss while they have comfort. They feel loss when comfort is gone. As long as he knows he can reach you, he relaxes. He gets lazy. He assumes you'll always be there. He assumes you'll always forgive. He assumes you'll always wait. But the moment you stop, the moment you choose peace over proving your worth, that's when the regret begins. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And that applies perfectly here. A man becomes conscious of what he had only when he feels the pain of losing it. As long as you cushion him, protect his ego, and shield him from consequences, he stays unconscious. He doesn't think. He doesn't grow. He doesn't appreciate. It's when you step back that the mirror appears. He sees himself without your support, without your encouragement, without your unconditional presence. He sees how much effort you actually carried. He sees the gap left behind, and that gap haunts him. Why he didn't appreciate you when you were there. Many women ask, how could he treat me like that? How could he not see everything I did? Because human nature is simple. What comes without effort isn't valued. When love shows up without boundaries, it becomes invisible. When affection isn't earned, it becomes disposable. When loyalty is automatic, it becomes expected. He learned to expect your sacrifice. He learned to assume your presence. He learned that no matter how little he gave, you would still give more. But here's something psychology teaches us. Effort builds value. Anything gained easily is easily forgotten. Anything gained through work is fiercely protected. You became routine to him, reliable, predictable, always there. And routine never registers as rare until it's gone. How regret begins. Regret doesn't hit all at once. It starts slowly, silently, in places he never expected. It starts the first time he reaches for his phone and realizes there's no message from you. It starts the first time he checks your social media and sees you smiling without him. It starts when he sees other men noticing you, admiring you, respecting you. It starts when he realizes you're no longer emotionally accessible, no longer waiting, no longer hoping. And suddenly what was once ordinary becomes extraordinary. What was once taken for granted becomes unforgettable. What was once assumed becomes a loss he can't ignore. The shift that breaks him. There is a shift in a woman that a man can feel instantly. It's not when she yells. It's not when she cries. It's not when she begs him to act right. He still feels safe when you're emotional, because emotional women stay. The shift is when she becomes calm, when she stops explaining, when she stops fighting for the relationship, when she no longer reacts. That silence scares him. That silence forces him to face himself. That silence shows him she is no longer attached. Carl Jung said, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another." There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. That means not every man is built to hold a real woman. And when he realizes you have outgrown the version of him who underappreciated you, A special kind of regret enters his chest, a regret that doesn't fade. When he starts to miss you, men don't miss the woman who waits. They miss the woman who walks away with dignity. He misses the woman who used to care deeply, but now guards her heart. He misses the woman who used to answer instantly, but now takes her time. He misses the woman who once made him a priority, but now has a full life that has no space for his inconsistency. Men start missing the woman they took for granted, the moment they realize she can be happy without them. Because here's another truth. Men don't fear losing the woman they love. They fear losing the woman who truly loved them, and realizing they will never find that level of loyalty again. The internal conflict. At first, he tries to pretend he doesn't care. He tries to act unbothered. He convinces himself he made the right choice. But beneath the surface, something starts to build. Tension. A war inside his ego. He begins replaying memories. He remembers how soft your voice was, how supportive you were, how safe your presence felt. He remembers how you believed in him, even when he didn't believe in himself. And suddenly those small things become priceless. What he once ignored becomes what he craves. What he once dismissed becomes what he searches for. What he once expected becomes what he now regrets losing. Carl Jung said, "What we resist persists." And that's exactly what happens internally with a man who thought you would always be there. The more he tries to suppress the regret, the stronger it becomes. The turning point. There comes a moment when he finally admits it to himself. He lost a woman who would have gone to war for him. A woman who truly cared. A woman who loved him beyond his flaws. A woman who wanted to build a future with him. And he starts wondering, why did I let her go? Why didn't I treat her better? Why did I think she would always stay? That's the moment regret breaks him. Because nothing is heavier than the memory of a woman you should have cherished. And his biggest torment? Knowing she will never be the same woman again. Regret is a slow burn. It doesn't explode in one dramatic moment. It creeps in quietly, like a shadow spreading across his mind. At first, he feels a small discomfort, something he can't quite explain. An emptiness where your presence used to be. Then that discomfort turns into unrest. Restlessness. A feeling he can't shake. A man who once felt certain suddenly feels uncertain. A man who once felt in control suddenly feels powerless. A man who once took you for granted suddenly realizes he took a blessing and turned it into a memory. And here's what most men will never admit. Regret changes them. It becomes a psychological storm that breaks through their facade. How regret rewrites his memory. Men rewrite the past when they lose someone irreplaceable. While he had access to you, he noticed everything that bothered him. The little imperfections, the disagreements, the things he used as excuses not to fully commit. But once you're gone, his mind flips the script. He stops remembering the annoyances and starts remembering the warmth. He stops remembering the arguments and starts remembering your laughter. He stops remembering the pressure and starts remembering the peace you brought. Suddenly, every good moment feels sharper, brighter, more meaningful than he realized at the time. This is the psychology of loss. The mind romanticizes what it no longer has access to. And that's when his internal dialogue begins. She really was different. Nobody else understands me like she did. Why did I push away someone who actually cared? Regret forces him to face himself. And that reflection is brutal. The ego versus the heart. When you were there, his ego was loud. His ego told him he could do better, that he had options, that you'd always be around. But when you leave, his ego begins to crumble, and the heart starts speaking. The heart says, "She believed in me. She stayed through things others would have walked away from. I didn't deserve her loyalty." What he once dismissed becomes what he longs for. And this is where the inner war begins. Because a man's ego hates admitting he made a mistake. But his heart refuses to let him forget you. The strongest regret is not losing a woman. It's losing the woman who stayed when he didn't deserve her. Silence as a trigger. Silence changes everything. When you stop calling, he starts wondering. When you stop chasing, he starts searching. When you stop explaining, he starts overthinking. Men are haunted by unanswered questions, and your silence becomes the loudest message he has ever heard. He starts replaying everything in his mind, not because he wants to, but because he can't stop. He becomes obsessed with the questions he used to ignore. Was she hurting while I was careless? Did she love me more than I realized? Why didn't I appreciate her when she was right there? The silence that once made him feel powerful now suffocates him. He starts missing the sound of your voice. He starts checking if you viewed his story. He starts hoping you'll break the silence first. But when you don't, when you remain calm, grounded, and distant, his chest tightens with a fear he has never felt before. The fear that you are truly gone. Why he comes back after losing you. Men come back for 3 reasons. 1. The shock of your absence finally hit him. 2. He realizes he won't find another woman like you. 3. His attachment awakens only after the emotional safety is gone. When he had you, he didn't feel urgency. Now that you're gone, urgency floods him. Every day without you gets heavier. Every memory becomes clearer. Every regret becomes sharper. He starts looking for pieces of you in other women. Your softness, your patience, your strength, your support. But no one matches the way you loved him. No one gives him the same peace. No one reaches him on a soul level. He realizes what psychologists call emotional imprinting. What if she's already moved on? He begins imagining another man holding what he threw away. Another man receiving the attention he used to get. The pain of replacement. A man may not appreciate a good woman while he has her, but he deeply fears seeing her with someone better. That is not someone richer or stronger, but someone who values what he ignored. Someone who listens. Someone who shows consistency. Someone who protects her heart the way he never did. That's when he breaks. That's when his pride collapses. That's when he thought you would always be available. He thought he would always have another chance. He thought you would never stop loving him until you did. The psychological crash. When regret reaches its peak. A man starts experiencing what psychologists call emotional withdrawal shock. He feels symptoms similar to addiction withdrawal because losing intimacy is a neurological loss. The brain literally goes into craving mode. He tries distractions, going out, hooking up, working more, numbing himself. But nothing fills the void. Because nothing replaces the presence of a woman who loved deeply. He scrolls through your old messages. He watches your videos. He reopens your photos. He replays old voice notes just to hear your tone. He becomes a prisoner of memories he once treated carelessly. The moment of realization. And then one night, when he's alone, when there's no noise, when there's no one to impress, the truth hits him with full force. He lost a woman he can never replace. A woman who wanted to build, not break. A woman who stood by him, not against him. A woman who gave him real love, not temporary attention. A woman he will search for again and again, but never find. That realization crushes him. It humbles him. It breaks the strongest ego. Carl Jung once said, "We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life." That means every mistake eventually confronts us. Every wound returns seeking healing. Every ignored truth demands acknowledgement. And his moment has arrived. He finally meets the version of himself he avoided. He sees the truth without excuses. He feels the regret without escape. And now he would give anything to undo what he did. When a woman finally becomes unavailable, emotionally, mentally, and sometimes physically, It triggers a whole new stage inside a man. This is where regret turns into something deeper, heavier, and harder to escape. A constant ache. Because now, it's not just that he lost you. It's that he no longer has access to you. Before, even after the breakup, he still felt a twisted kind of comfort. He thought, she still cares. She still hurts. She still reacts. As long as you reacted to him, got angry, cried, replied, checked on him, he felt safe. In his mind, you were still emotionally his. But when your energy truly detaches, something shifts in his nervous system. You're no longer emotionally reachable. You're no longer orbiting him. You're no longer waiting in the background as a safety net. That's when the panic begins. When fear turns into longing. At first, it's fear. A quiet fear that whispers, what if she's really done this time? He brushes it off. He distracts himself. He tells himself, you're just being dramatic. But as time passes, and you remain consistent in your distance, fear changes flavor. It becomes longing. He doesn't just fear losing you in theory anymore. He feels the loss. He goes to send you a funny meme, then stops, realizing you might not respond. He passes a place you used to go together and feels a strange emptiness. He hears a song that reminds him of you and suddenly goes quiet. That's when he realizes longing is not just missing your body. He misses your mind. He misses your voice. He misses the way you understood him when he didn't even understand himself. And that realization is brutal, because now he isn't just remembering a woman. He's remembering a home. You were emotional shelter, and he walked out. The shock of your emotional distance. There's a specific moment that shatters a man. It's when he finally reaches out and feels the difference. He sends a message, and you respond, but the warmth is gone. You're polite, calm, maybe even kind, but detached. No extra emojis, no long explanations, no chasing of the conversation. You respond like someone who has a full life, a full schedule, and a full sense of self that no longer revolves around him. And that simple shift cuts deep, because before, he could always feel your emotional pull. Even if you were angry, the emotion meant you cared. The love, the frustration, the tears, all proof that your heart was still invested. But now your energy is different, grounded, contained, reserved. You're not trying to convince him of your value. You're not trying to convince him to change. You're not trying to convince him to stay. You've accepted who he was and chosen yourself. For a man, that is one of the most jarring experiences. Realizing the woman he took for granted no longer needs him emotionally. It makes him feel something he has avoided his entire life. Replaceable. How his mind starts planning a comeback. Once the longing sets in, his brain starts doing what it always does, trying to fix the discomfort. He tells himself, I'll just reach out and see how she's doing. Maybe we can catch up as friends first. Maybe she just needs to hear me say I miss her. But underneath those excuses is the real truth. He wants back into a life that functioned beautifully around him. While he put in half effort, he starts plotting. What should I say? How do I start the conversation? Should I apologize? Should I joke like before so it feels natural? He might start with something casual. Hey, saw something that reminded me of you. Hope you're good. Just wanted to check on you. He's testing the waters, trying to see if the door is still open, trying to measure how much of your heart he still controls. But what shocks him is not that you reply differently. It's that you are different, meeting a new version of you. The woman he left was soft, constantly available, always emotionally reachable. The woman he returns to is softer with herself, stronger with her boundaries, and no longer emotionally dependent on him. You're not cold, you're just not desperate. You're not rude, you're just not overinvested. You're not cruel, you're just not carrying the relationship on your back anymore. He expects the old script. He says a few sweet things. You melt. You reopen your heart. You make it easy for him to come back. But this time, the script doesn't work. He feels it in the way you take your time to respond. He feels it in the way you no longer ask deep emotional questions. He feels it when you don't bring up the past. Don't chase closure. Don't ask where he's been. Your indifference isn't hateful. It's healed. And that is what breaks him most. The emotional mirror he can't escape. Before, whenever you brought up his behavior, he could deflect. You're too emotional. You're overreacting. You're needy. You're insecure. But now you don't protest. You don't argue. You don't try to make him see your side. You simply hold your peace and live your life. Now he has no one to project onto, no one to blame, no one to fight with, to distract from his own choices. He is finally alone with himself. And there is no louder mirror than silence. Where he once said, "She's doing too much," he now thinks, "She did so much." Where he once said, "She's always there," he now thinks, "She was always there for me." Where he once said, "She'll never leave," he now realizes, "I was wrong." He sees the reality. You weren't the problem. His inability to value you was the humbling. Regret has a way of humbling even the proudest man. He starts seeing everything he missed. The way you always checked in on him, even when you were tired. The way you supported his dreams, even when he was inconsistent with yours. The way you stood beside him when things were hard, instead of running. You weren't clingy. You were committed. You weren't desperate. You were loyal. You weren't weak. You were invested. But men often mistake emotional generosity for emotional dependence, until it's no longer offered. Now, in the absence of your effort, he finally understands the depth of what he had. And that understanding hurts when he realizes you're no longer his safe place. The ultimate shock for a man isn't just that you've changed. It's that your heart is no longer a place he can casually visit. He realizes he can't trauma dump and expect you to listen for hours like before. He can't go silent for days and expect you to hold space for him. He can't give you half of himself and still receive all of you. Where there used to be an open door, there is now a gate. Where there used to be constant access, there are now standards. Where there used to be unconditional emotional labor, there are now boundaries. And for the first time, he feels what you felt for so long. On the outside, unsure, afraid of losing something that mattered. He thought he could press pause on you and come back whenever he wanted. But life doesn't work like that. Healing doesn't wait for someone to appreciate it. Growth doesn't freeze itself for someone who took too long to see the value. The quiet power of your glow-up. As you detach, you don't just disappear. You evolve. You pour into your own life. You rebuild your self-esteem. You reconnect with friends, dreams, goals. You laugh again. Not the laugh he knows, but a freer version. You look in the mirror and see someone you're finally proud of. That glow. He feels it, even from a distance. He might see it in your photos. He might feel it in your tone. He might hear it in the way you no longer sound heavy when you speak. And that's when his regret turns from, "I miss her," into, "I ruined this." He now understands something he never thought about when he had you. You weren't just a chapter in his life. You were an opportunity to become a better man, and he wasted it. The moment regret turns into desperation is when he realizes that the door he assumed would always be open has quietly closed. Not with drama, not with anger, not with a fight, but with maturity. Because nothing terrifies a man more than losing access to a woman who used to love him fiercely, and now treats him with calm neutrality. That's when he begins trying to claw his way back into your life. At first, he uses subtle tactics. He tests the waters to see what he still controls. He sends a harmless message. "Hope you're doing well." He watches to see if you respond immediately, the way you once did. But when you reply with gentle distance, no emotion, no urgency, no emotional investment, he feels a sting he didn't expect. He realizes the dynamic has changed. And for the first time, He is on the outside looking in. The strategies men use when they realize they lost you. A man in regret enters survival mode. He will try multiple psychological strategies to regain what he lost. He may pretend to be indifferent, but internally he is strategizing. He tries the nostalgia route. He brings up old memories. Remember that vacation we took? Remember that night we stayed up talking until 5 a.m.? He's trying to pull you back into a place where he once had emotional power. He hopes the past can reopen doors the present has locked. He tries the apology route. I'm sorry for everything. I know I messed up. But you can feel it. His apology doesn't come from empathy. It comes from fear. He's not apologizing because he finally understands your pain. He's apologizing because he fears being replaced. He tries the jealousy route. He suddenly posts pictures with people he doesn't care about. He pretends he's happy, busy, thriving. It's an act, not to move on, but to provoke a reaction. He wants you to feel something, anything, because silence is killing him. He tries the emergency route. He creates drama. I really need to talk to you. It's important. Can we meet? Suddenly, everything is urgent because he feels you slipping further away. But nothing works because he's no longer dealing with the old version of you. He's dealing with a woman who outgrew him. Why his tactics stop working. He's trying to solve an emotional equation that no longer exists. The woman who once responded instantly now responds when she chooses. The woman who once rearranged her world now prioritizes herself. The woman who once needed answers now needs peace. He tries to reopen a chapter that life has already closed. And that's what torments him most. He used to control the rhythm. You were always emotionally available. He could disappear and return on his terms. He could give you little and receive everything. But now your silence is louder than every argument you ever had. And he feels powerless. This is where male regret becomes emotional collapse, because now he must face the truth he avoided while he had you. You were not replaceable. You were rare. You were not needy. You were loyal. You were not weak. You were devoted. You were not too much. He was too little. When he sees you refuse the breadcrumbs, there comes a moment he tries to re-enter your life casually, expecting the old pattern to reappear. We should catch up sometime. I miss us. Can we talk? And instead of collapsing emotionally like before, you respond gracefully. I'm not sure that's necessary anymore, but I appreciate your message. Or simply, I'm busy, but wish you well. He wasn't ready for that. He was ready for tears, arguments, passion, anything that proved he still had emotional power. But instead, you're composed, unbothered, peaceful. And that's when the panic hits his chest like a weight, because now he realizes something that breaks him. He lost the version of you who would have moved the world for him. And even if he wins you back someday, he will never again meet the woman who once would have given him everything. That version has died, and he is the reason. The psychological collapse of regret. When a man loses emotional access to a woman who loved deeply, it triggers a profound internal crisis. He begins to question himself. How did I let her slip away? Why didn't I do more? Why didn't I appreciate her when I had her? Those questions don't go away. They echo. They haunt. They play on repeat at night when he can't sleep. In the morning when he wakes up to emptiness. In the middle of the day when a random memory hits without warning. Regret doesn't leave. It sits. It grows. It poisons. He starts comparing every woman he meets to you. And every comparison hurts him more. No one loves like you did. No one understands him like you did. No one believes in him the way you once did. He begins to realize something devastating. He didn't just lose a woman. He lost his safest place. The irony is cruel. He ran from the intensity of your love only to drown in the void left behind. The pain of knowing he's too late. What destroys him most is not that he lost you. but knowing he can never get back the version of you he lost. Because now you carry wisdom. Now you carry boundaries. Now you carry self-respect. Now you carry clarity. You no longer see him as a home. You see him as a lesson. And that transformation is the one thing he cannot undo or reverse. He wants to fix it, but he doesn't know how. He wants another chance, but he doesn't deserve one. He wants to go back in time, but time has moved forward without him. He finally feels what you felt. He finally sees what you saw. He finally hurts the way you cried. But now it's his turn to sit with the pain when he watches you bloom. Nothing punishes a man more than watching a woman he took for granted glow without him. At first, he told himself you were faking it, pretending, acting strong. But as time passes, he realizes the glow is real, and he had nothing to do with it. You aren't who he left. You are who you were always meant to become. You shine now. You speak differently. You move differently. You laugh differently. You choose differently. You became the woman he didn't have the capacity to grow with. And the cruelest realization of all, you were always going to become this woman. He just won't be the man standing next to you when you do. Nothing shatters a man more than the moment he realizes he is no longer a part of your future, only a chapter in your past. At first, he believed your silence was temporary, that your distance was emotional rebellion, that eventually you would soften and return. Men are conditioned to believe they will always get another chance, that they can disappear and come back when they feel ready, that a good woman will always be waiting in the same place they left her. But the day he sees you truly moving on, his world collapses, not because he suddenly discovered he loves you, but because he realizes you finally learned to love yourself more than you loved him. That is the loss he never prepared for. The day he sees the truth, it happens unexpectedly. Maybe he sees a photo of you smiling with real joy again. Maybe someone tells him you've been glowing lately. Maybe he finds out you've been traveling, thriving, rebuilding. Or maybe he notices another man standing where he once stood. Someone who looks at you like you're the best thing that ever happened to him. Someone who sees your value immediately and doesn't have to lose you to understand it. Someone who shows up with effort, consistency, and intention. The exact things he refused to offer. That moment pierces him deeper than any breakup ever could, because now he sees the difference. You're not pretending to be okay. You are okay. You're not forcing happiness. You found happiness. You're not surviving anymore. You're living. And suddenly, all those excuses he used to justify losing you collapse. She was too emotional. She cared too much. She was too available. Now he realizes those were never flaws. Those were the qualities of a woman who loved him deeply and fully. Now he sees he wasn't strong enough to handle real love. He settled for temporary comfort over long-term commitment. He chose ego over effort. He chose freedom over loyalty. He chose silence over communication. And now he's left with consequence when he can't escape himself. Men do not process regret analytically. They feel it viscerally. It doesn't stay in their mind. It lodges in their chest. At night, when distractions fall away, regret becomes a weight pressing against his ribcage. That's when the memories attack hardest. The way you looked at him when you believed in him. The way your hand fit perfectly in his. The way your voice could calm his storms. The way you stayed, even when he gave you reasons to walk away. He realizes you were the only person who offered him unconditional emotional loyalty. And he destroyed it with his carelessness. Now he's forced to face something he avoided when he had you. Himself. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That is where he is now, facing the unconscious patterns he once ignored. He can't blame you anymore. He can't blame circumstances. He can't blame timing. For the first time, he sees the truth. He lost you because he wasn't the man he pretended to be when he finally wants to try. There comes a moment in every regretful man's journey when he wants another chance, not for the old relationship, but for redemption. He wants to prove he can be different, to rewrite the ending, to show the version of himself he never allowed you to see. He rehearses the words, "I'm sorry, I was wrong. I should have treated you better. I didn't realize what I had." He imagines what it would be like if you gave him one more opportunity. But here is the cruel twist. By the time a man is ready to love a woman right, she is often already healed from the version of herself that loved him wrong. He returns to a door that no longer opens. He returns to a place that no longer exists. He returns to a woman who has outgrown the need for his apology. You don't hate him. You're not angry. You don't want revenge. You've simply moved forward. And nothing is more painful to a man than realizing the closure he always assumed he could claim has already been written without him. The final stage of regret. Regret transforms from urgency to grief. It becomes something permanent, not loud, not dramatic, quiet, lifelong, because now every relationship he enters becomes a reminder. He compares, he searches, he waits for the feeling he once had with you, but it never comes. No one listens the way you listened. No one laughs the way you laughed. No one cares the way you cared. No one loves with the same fire and devotion. And he realizes something devastating. He didn't just lose a woman. He lost his once-in-a-lifetime. A man can replace a relationship, but he can never replace a soul connection. That is the difference. Your evolution becomes his punishment. His punishment is not watching you suffer. His punishment is watching you rise. His penance is watching the woman he once believed he possessed evolve into a muse he can only gaze at from a distance. His torture is knowing another man is now basking in the light he chose to extinguish. His consequence is the crushing realization that no apology is loud enough to reopen the door he let close. His burden is that your memory will haunt him for the duration of his life, not simply because you were memorable, but because he only learned the value of the treasure once his hands were empty. And you finally see that losing him was never a refusal. It was a course correction. It forced a return to your own center, to your expansion, to your awakening. You realize he was never the great love of your story. You were the great love of your story. He was merely the catalyst required to unlock the masterpiece you were becoming. A version of you who is done begging. A version who is done justifying. A version who refuses to diminish. A version who is sovereign in her worth. You become the archetype he spends a lifetime looking for in every other woman, yet never finds. Because now the reality has set in. Too late. The woman he treated as an option became the woman he can never replicate. And that is his eternal loss.